I read an article this week. It was about an American businessman. He was fried, burned out on life. The doctor told him, you've just gone over the top. You need to get away. So he headed down to South America, found a little fishing village, kind of a resort touristy area, and was having trouble sleeping. One morning he got up, and he went out and he was walking along one of the docks, one of the boat fronts or the river fronts. And there was a fisherman. He did charter tours, but this little rickety boat. And the businessman was like, I need a break. So he just gets in with this local fisherman, goes out, and as they head out into the waters, this fisherman's just amazing. Every time he casts, he pulls something in. Every new area they go, he knows what type of fish they're going to get. And the businessman's asking, this is incredible. How do you do this? Do you go out ahead of time? Do you have some secret plan? He said, no, I know the waters. I've grown up here. I know what type of fish is where. Even with all the new fishing business coming into town, I know my spots. And the businessman says to him, with what you do and how you do it, and all you've got is this little rickety boat, you've got to upsize. You need to go get a large charter boat. You can charge more money. You can get more people on this trip. You can make more money. And then with catching more fish with the bigger boat, you could go into the city market and you could sell the fresh fish there. That's a huge thing here for the tourists. You need to upgrade. The fisherman looks at the businessman and says, you don't understand. I enjoy fishing. I have a time frame when I fish, and then I go home to my wife and kids, and I enjoy my family. And then at night, he was in a band. He said, I go to the city square, and I play music with the band. And the American businessman is looking at him, and he's saying, where are your priorities? And the local fisherman's looking at the American going, where are your priorities? And it really struck the question for me, what's important? What's really important to you? What do you value? Money? Family? Music? Service? Position? Church? Hobbies? Shoes? God? Titles? Offices? Toys? What is it that you value? What is it the top shelf stuff for your life? How do you know? How do you know what's really important to you? Along with this fishing story, especially with the series we're in, I came across a couple of articles. How do you know what's important to you? And I would go as far as to say, what are you obsessive about? I know it's none of you, but do you know anyone who's so wrapped up into something that their life just becomes obsessed with it? How do you know what's priority to you? How do you know what's most important, or even what can borderline on obsessive for you? First of all, listen to how you talk. What are the constant conversations out of your mouth? What are your go-to conversations? If the room gets quiet, what do you go to first to talk about? It's probably your priorities. Where do you spend your money? If I can see your bank account, I can show you what's important to you. Look at your calendar. If all things being equal, an event comes up, how important is that event that you would ditch something off of your calendar that's already in place? What takes priority for you? What is it on your calendar that if two events come up, I will choose this one? Why? What is that important to you? Your time and your money are great indicators of what's important. If I had $1 million sitting right here on the side of the stage and I said to you, you've got to choose the $1 million or choose that, and no, you do not get to pick both. If you had to pick, what would it be that you'd say, I'll turn my back on the $1 million to go after something else? What is it? What's priority for you? Somebody else said, what makes you sentimental? What is it that when a new movie comes out, you look at it and you, oh, that's going to be horrible. That's a tearjerker. It's going to rip my guts out. Let's go get tickets. What is it that just stirs you, even sentimentally, that even when it hurts, you just watch it because it's so important to you? One person wrote an article, what makes you more positive? The things that get you stirred up, they wrote that it gives you more positivity because you're excited about life. You feel like it gives you purpose and direction. What makes your heart beat faster? And a surefire way to find out what's important to you is take the entire list I just read and run it through all of that grids. What is it that is of utmost importance in your calendar, in your finances, in your emotions, in your in everyday life? What is it that's truly important to you? Now, last week we launched a new series, and it's entitled Pulse, the Heartbeat of Spring Lake. And just a little review, the reason we called it Pulse is, first of all, anything that's alive and has a heartbeat has a pulse. A pulse is a sign of life. And when something stirs you or gets you excited, your pulse will reflect it. Your pulse will show you what you feel brings you to life. Secondly, your pulse is the rhythm of your body. If your pulse is off beat, if your heart starts missing beats or there's an arrhythmia, the other systems in your body will be affected. Everything runs off of your pulse. These are the core things in our life. Now, this week we're going to look at a part of what motivates us, or look at our pulse as a church, and we're going to look at the core values of Spring Lake. Now, this is something new. We've never rolled this out before. This week we're going to cover the first 3. Next week we'll cover the last 4. And if you're newer to Spring Lake, maybe you're still checking things out, what I'm hoping when you hear these, especially the first 3 today, when you hear them, 2 things just kind of jump to mind for you. First of all, it resonates with you. That is a core value. That is important. That is something that needs to be at the center of life, personally and for a church. And secondly, I hope when you hear these, you just say, well, yeah, that's a no-brainer. This church does that already. These core values should reflect already who we are. The first 3 core values we're going to look at today are 3 traits. They're 3 practices that Jesus said are a trait or a practice of someone who's following me. The Bible calls these people disciples. These traits are the traits that a disciple should have. The first one, the first value we'll look at is love. Love. It starts and ends with love, love of God, and love of others. If we could put it up on the screen. If we can put it up on the screen. All right, we've got it on your outlines too. There it is, on mine. There it is. Okay. What I'd like us to do, and we're going to do this with each one, I'll give you the main point, and then I'd like us to read the sub-point together. So, love, on 3, we'll read it together. 1, 2, 3. It starts and ends with love. Love God, love others. So Matthew 22, there's a lawyer who comes up to Jesus. And if a lawyer's going to ask a question, what's he going to ask questions about? He says, Jesus, what's the most important law? Good lawyer question to ask. What's the most important law? Jesus responds in Matthew 22, verse 37. He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commandments. Every law, every rule should return to these 2 points. Love God, love others. The motive of our actions and our attitudes should have the same end game no matter what the topic is. And that end game is loving God and loving others. That's why it's a core value. Jesus said, a new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. 1 John chapter 4, verses 7 and 8. It says, dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. Loving God, loving others, always. Now here's the kicker. The word here for love, and there's a lot of different words for love in Greek, which is the language the New Testament, the last half of the Bible was written in. There's a lot of different words for love. But in the challenge that God gives us, love God, love others, the word for love there is the exact same word. The love we have for God and the love we have for each other should be the same. The love that you show to God, I love God so much. The love you show to each other should be the same love. It should be the same reflection of love. Now, I want you to just kind of look at the person on either side of you. Just take a good look at them. Now, let me ask you this. How are you doing with that? How are we doing with loving each other the way we are called to love God? I want you to think about your neighbors back at your house. The person on the right and the left of you, person behind you. If you're in an apartment, I want you to think about the person who lives upstairs or downstairs from you, the really loud ones. How are we doing at loving them? Because what Jesus said is, you want to be a disciple of mine? Love God and love each other at the same level. There's a love we're to have for each other. Our love for each other should reflect the same as our love for God, and our love for God should reflect in the same that we love each other. Now, can you imagine a church that loved that way? Can you imagine a church that loved God and loved its city that much? So when we talk about Spring Lake loving God and Spring Lake loving Green Bay, God has called us to both. This is a charge, and it's a core value for us. Can you imagine a church that when you walked in the door, they didn't care if you were a Republican, a Democrat, a Greenpeace, or independent. They would just meet you and say, come here, hug, come on, yeah. Glad you're here today. Okay, that may be a little weird. We'll skip the background, but glad you're here today. Can you imagine a church that when you walked in, they say, well, we may not hold that exact view, but come on, hug, let's love. Can you imagine a church where Packers, Lions, Bears, and Vikings fans just kind of gathered? Group hug, too much? But I'm going to tell you right now, the church in America, the way that we're pegged is not by loving too much. It's not by loving so much. But what did Jesus say? Love God, love each other. Same word in both directions and toward both groups. If we can get to that point as a church, and I'm going to start with me. I'm not there. Working on it, but I'm not there. But if this year we get a little closer to loving Jesus and loving each other the way God called us to than we were last year, then we're moving toward maturity and disciples, being disciples. And if next year we can take one or two steps toward loving Jesus and loving each other a little more like God called us to, we're taking a step toward discipleship. It's a core value to grow closer and closer to Jesus by loving those who are made in his image and by loving him. Love. It's a core value piece. And when we do that, our stuff goes on the shelf. It'll become secondary. Now, our second core value takes us from just loving God to a completely new plane, and that's worshiping him. The Bible tells us love is for everyone. Worship is only for Jesus. Love is for everyone, but worship is reserved for God. So our second core value is worship and gratitude. Worship and gratitude. Can we read this together? 1, 2, 3. We will praise him for who he is. We will not take this life for granted. And we will have an attitude of gratitude to God during the joys and challenges of life. Psalm 100 says, shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful songs. Know that the Lord is God. It is he who has made us. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name. For the Lord is good and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues to all generations. Now the words in the Old Testament, really the first half of the Bible, the words in the Old Testament it's written in Hebrew, and a lot of the words for worship have to do with actions. So for example, the words that would relate in our English for worship include spinning, shouting, dancing, clapping, and there's reverent responses as well. But when we get to the New Testament, the part that's written in Greek, the part about Jesus, and after the life of Christ, there's 3 primary words for worship. The first one is latruo. And latruo is used 21 times, and that is a religious homage or service. This is that. It's gathering together for religious purposes. That's the first word. The second word is sabomai. And it's a reverence or to hold in awe. It's looking at something and just being so amazed, your jaw drops open. It's just incredible. 10 times that's used in the New Testament. The third word, which is used 59 times, it's the main word for worship, is proskunuo. And proskunuo, it means, the literal word of it means to kiss or to lick, to kiss like a dog licking a master's hand. It's a place of surrender and humility and trust and denial of self. Worship is all about the one you're worshiping, the master, and not about us. It carries with it the idea of falling down to kiss the ground or to kiss the feet of a king. And my guess is if I were to ask you, how many people would you be willing to kiss their feet? You could either count it on one hand or no hands. But what God says, when we go to a place of worship, it goes beyond just the affection of love, and it's a place of surrender of ourself. And we do it with gratitude, not with groveling or upset or begrudgingly. We do it with gratitude. The English translation of this word literally means to ascribe worth to something. What you worship, you are granting ultimate worthship in your life. What you worship, you are showing its worth in your life. It's of highest value. It's bigger than a song. It's bigger than a message. It's bigger than the coffee. It's bigger than your surroundings. Now, our environment can affect our worship. That's a message for another day. But what goes up, what's set for the Lord, comes from a heart that's determined to worship and put ourselves second. King David wrote the book of Psalms. That first verse we read about this. And Psalms is songs and poems that David wrote to God. And what amazes me about David's writing of the Psalms is there are places in life where you just hear where he's bottoming out. He's hit a rough spot. There's nowhere for him to dig any deeper. He's hit solid ground because there's nowhere left to dig. But yet in those times, it's amazing how many times David demands and commands himself. Things are rough. Things are down. My head is dropped. God, I'm wondering where you are. And then it flips and you'll read where David says, I will bless the Lord. My soul will call on God. I will lift my eyes to heaven where my help comes from. David, I feel like sulking. I'm done. I just feel, pick your head up, David says, because I will bless God no matter what. I'll be thankful for what he's brought me through, and I'll be thankful that even though I'm in the pit right now, I'm not in it alone. It's a worship from an attitude of gratitude. It's seeing a God who's bigger than any problem that you can have. Worship leader for my dad was a pastor, so the worship leader who led worship for him all my years of growing up, his name was Gail Eccles. Gail would start almost every service the same way. He was straight out of the mountains, the backwoods of Virginia, and he would start by getting up in front of the congregation, and he'd say, there's 2 times to worship the Lord, when you feel like it and when you don't. Scripture says weeping may last for the night, but joy comes in the morning. Worshiping God with an attitude of gratitude is a core value for us as a church. Some of you have had to go through the valleys. And as a church family, we go through many of these things together. And even in individual life, our heart, what we want, what our core value is to remember how big and creative and awesome and powerful God is. And that brings us to worship with gratitude. A sunrise will draw out a response of grateful worship. Holding a baby or a grandbaby will evoke a response of grateful worship. A good grade or good friendships will bring a response of thankful worship. Hearing the stories of life change and answered prayers and what God is doing will stir an honest awe and worship within us, realizing what the cross was all about and what Jesus did for us will bring us to a place of awe and grateful worship. John 4:23 and 24 says, "Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in the spirit and in truth." As a church, we will love God and love each other. We will stand in awe of our God and worship him from a heart of gratefulness. And when we do these things, as we said earlier, we look a little bit more each day like the Jesus we're following. We're becoming more and more like him in our discipleship. And that's our third core value for today, disciple making. Disciple making. Can we read this together? On 3, 1, 2, 3. Jesus is at the center of it all. The heart of all we do focuses on Christ. Our message is his message from Scripture. Our assignment is his assignment for the church, to make disciples who make disciples. Matthew 28, verse 19 and 20. Jesus said, "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the end of the age." This isn't just a core value. This is a command, which makes it a core value. This is Jesus standing in front of us as the drill instructor and saying, here's your marching orders. Get out there, make disciples, go, 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 get to your place, get the troops moving. This is God's call to us. Go and be a disciple who makes disciples. This isn't just about putting a notch in our belt for more people in the room or a bigger personal ministry or more people knowing about us. This is about seeing people look more like Jesus. Church never saved anyone. Jesus did. That's why we're called to be his disciples. Let's make people and let's be a people who look more like Jesus. We don't want anyone looking more like the pastor. Believe me, this look is tough to keep. We don't want people who are looking more like another staff member or an elder or a small group leader or someone they see on TV. We want to see people looking more like Jesus. From the inside. Let's learn from each other. Let's challenge each other. Let's be role models for each other as we grow together. But the end game isn't anything less than a church with a heart that is constantly becoming more and more like Christ. More and better disciples. Growing in who we are in depth and maturity and understanding. And then bringing others along in the same process. And once again, if we're 1 or 2 steps further ahead next year than we are this year, if we're 1 or 2 steps ahead and you say 1 or 2 steps, that's not very much. In 10 years, that's growth. That's maturity. That's deeper roots. That's bringing others along, welcoming them into the family. Love, worship, discipleship. Our 3 core values for today. So why is this even important? Why do we have to put such an emphasis on this? Because a church without Christ at its core, you can still put church on your sign, but you're not the church that Jesus died for. You're not the church that God has called the church out to be. Do you know there's a movement right now? You can Google this, you can look it up. There's a movement of atheist churches. Atheist churches around this country. There's one state where the atheist church is over 5,000 people in one building. They have children's ministries, they have youth ministries, they go on missions trips, they have music services with upbeat music and really encouraging stuff, and then they have moments and times of reflection. They have messages that speak from the Bible and other religious literature, and people who are humanitarians and just that kind of person, and their whole goal is for you to leave uplifted, because Huffington Post, they wrote this in an article. What they saw, what atheists were realizing is they were missing something. And I'm reading this going, no kidding! They were missing something. So they started religious services without religion, without God. And we look at this And as a church, if we don't have these as our core values, are we any different? Nicky Gumbel is a pastor in England. He writes about the Church of England. And he says it kind of tongue-in-cheek, but he's like, the church, God left the Church of England years ago, and the Church of England was fine with it because he kept messing up their plans. He says, we've learned to get along quite comfortably without him. If we as a church lose our primary focus, who we're supposed to love like and who we're supposed to love, who is the only one deserving of our worship, and who we are disciples of and who we're to bring people to, we could find ourselves in the same hole. Now, next week, the core values are going to look at a little bit more of the boots on the ground stuff. How do we live out the three that we're talking about right now? But as we talk about love, worship, and gratitude, and disciple making, what I'd like us to do in closing is kind of go into a time, personally take this home with you, as a time of reflection. What's really important to you? In light of life and in light of eternity, where does it fit? And then as a church, and we do this with as an elder board or a leadership team, our ministry teams, how are we doing at loving, maturing, and reaching? How have we moved forward from last year? But I would encourage you, look in the mirror. And when it comes to loving God and loving others, how are we doing? Are we moving forward? Are we maturing in our walk with Christ? Or are we just showing up on Sunday? How are we doing with an attitude or a heart of worship and gratitude? Are we ready to submit ourselves in the place that we would be at Jesus' feet? How are we doing in being able to shut everything else out and worshiping God and God alone with a heart of gratitude, no matter what the challenges look like around us? And then how are we doing in our walk as a disciple? Are we looking a little bit more like Jesus? Are we encouraging and bringing anyone else along? Are we sharing the faith that God has given us? I'd like to encourage you that these don't just become core values of a church, they become core values of life. That loving people, worshiping God, and becoming more like Jesus truly matter to us. Would you bow your